day after Cinco de Mayo. So we're all alert today, I hope. I first want to thank you for your patience. Council finished very late, but I do want to thank the staff for the hard work. They did a yeoman's job in getting the nationalization ordinance to that place. And thanks, Councilor Labange, for introducing it, but it was almost 3 years of work, so thank you, staff, for that hard work. What I'm really doing is buying time as well, because I am very grateful, I'm very sincere about that. But I do know Councilor Weiss is on his way, and there are several items we have. And this committee suffers, if we skip a committee date, it means we get up to 24 different items on the agenda. So we pay for that. But we do have quite a few that we can move on consent. And as soon as Councilman Weiss gets here, we can go through those. But I did want to do a little bit of housekeeping. When you come to the microphone, please give us your name and address. You can tell the acoustics here aren't the greatest. So please speak into the microphone as close as you can, so that way we can hear you a little bit more clearly. And if you can't hear me, don't hesitate to let me know. If I start mumbling, let me know, because we'll have a long agenda today. Keep your eye on the clock. There's 2 minutes. I know some of you have worked hard on some letters, documentation to present as evidence. You can submit those to the clerk, that's Barbara, and she can get us your letters as well for the file to be reviewed. So we appreciate your cooperation there. Perhaps we could do, our planning director would like to step up and maybe go through the report.
I'm happy to help you fill time.
But it's important substance.
Thank you very much, Chairman Reyes. As you know, I was out of town with many of the planners last week for the National American Planning Association conference, where the City of Los Angeles did 10 panels on planning work in Los Angeles. It was very, very well received. We had standing room only at many of our panels, and it was very successful, and I think shined a spotlight on some of the wonderful work that's occurring in Los Angeles. We want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to fly to the conference and present a panel on the Arroyo Seco. It was very well received also, and we were very pleased, and we appreciate your support in planning. I wanted to share with you that the Planning Department yesterday went in front of the Budget and Finance Committee to present our budget, the mayor's proposal for our budget, and we of course are very pleased that our budget is being recommended for an increase of about $2.5 million, mostly in support of our community planning process. And this is the commitment that the Planning Department has made to both the City Council and to the residents of this city, that we will constantly be working on 12 community plans, so that every 10 years, every community plan in this city gets redone, replanned, and that we are doing complex plans that will really provide some assurance to neighbors and to people who do business in this city about what is going to be with their communities. And we're paying attention to things like public facilities and amenities. We're paying attention to urban design and neighborhood character. We're paying attention to transportation issues. It is our goal to help you really have neighborhoods that are much more livable, much more walkable, and that provide you with better access to services and to neighborhood needs. So we are very pleased that we're getting that kind of support from the mayor's office, the CAO, and yesterday Budget and Finance. They also added, and I think many of those in the development community will be pleased to know that yesterday they put back in our budget a request that we had made for 6 new planners to work on EIRs, We currently have 2 people working on EIRs. We used to do about 5 full EIRs a year. We are now doing 50. And so the addition of 6 new staff people to work on EIRs will make, I think, a huge difference in terms of being able to more timely get the EIRs out, and this is good for neighborhoods also. The third thing that I wanted to mention is that I too wanted to congratulate staff on the passage of the mansionization ordinance. We are extremely pleased. This is the culmination of more than 2 years of work led by Betsy Weissman, Eric Lopez, Anita Cernan, and Michelle Sorkin, and we are very, very proud of all of them and the work that they did. And we wanted to especially today thank Chairman Reyes for the leadership that he provided at the meeting today. We are very grateful.
Thank you.
We are very grateful. It's a complicated issue, and we, of course, are very pleased to have this behind us so that we can immediately begin working on the hillside. So, Betsy, you can have one night off, and tomorrow you can start working on the hillside mansionization ordinance. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry Goldberg. And I did fly in that morning to Vegas, and I flew out that evening. Really great weather. It was really nice, but it was good to see folks from throughout the country actually responding to the very interesting strategies and the nuances and all the different planning efforts that's going in Los Angeles. We're not just a big bowl of smog, but they're real interesting neighborhoods with so many different histories. So it's good to be there, and great to see the staff there.
Thank you.
We've been joined by Councilman Jack Weiss. Thank you, Councilman Weiss, for being here. I appreciate that. And we've got quite an agenda today, but I think a good number of them we can plow through, and there are several with speaker cards that we will engage. And so, let's see. We do have a guest with us, Veronica Badia, a candidate for the North Valley APC. Ms. Badia would like to come on up to the microphone, introduce yourself. And I first want to say thank you for stepping up and joining the city family as a commissioner, as a volunteer position. It is a very demanding one because land use and planning issues are very dear to the heart of our constituents. So please give us a little bit about share a little bit about yourself.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Veronica Padilla. I live at 8700 Norris Avenue in Sun Valley. I live and grew up there still. I graduated from UCLA in 2006 as an urban planner. I am very excited to be given the honor to serve as a commissioner, and I know there's a great responsibility in doing that. So I'm prepared for it, and I think I'm very much qualified, not only because of my educational background, but because I do live in the community. I know what the needs are, and I'm prepared to give our community members a voice.
So is that a master's from UCLA?
Yes, sorry, it's a master's, and I also have an undergrad from UCLA as environmental studies and geography, so I'm a Bruin all the way.
Well, what is your, happen to be two Bruins here, but what is your line of work now, may I ask? What is it that you engage at this time?
Well, right after grad school, I did environmental consulting. I worked on one project, which was an amended EIR on the Northeast campus on San Fernando and Fletcher. After that, I went over to ICON CDC, which stands for Initiating Change in Our Communities, and it's a nonprofit in Coinga. We focus on business outreach, and I manage about 5 grants. I have a small staff of about 3 people, and our main focus is to bring jobs to the community, preserve our small businesses, and providing free workshops such as financial literacy and whatnot.
Great. Well, I thank you for stepping up. I want to thank the mayor for providing us qualified folks. I think trial by fire would probably be an understatement. But APCs have many engaging issues. It's one of the first front line in dealing with some controversial projects, and we need people who understand the theory, who understand the process, but more importantly, understand communities.
Right.
And that's something that's very important, I think, in the process. Any other questions, Colin?
Thank you.
That was a big good luck.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you so much. So we'd like to approve as recommended by this committee, and we'll see you in council. On what date will be?
The 13th of May.
The 13th.
Yes.
And all the forms have been submitted for, okay, great. Well, thank you, Ms. Padilla.
Thank you.
Good luck
Have a
to you.
good one.
And no relationship to Alex Padilla, right?
I'm sorry?
No relationship to
No
Senator
relationship.
Padilla?
No,
Okay.
but he's a
All right.
good guy.
All right, he's a good guy. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Let's go through the agenda, and I'll address those items that do not have speaker cards, and we'll take it one step at a time. Number 3, I don't see any cards, and a motion is to adopt. Number 4, see no cards. Motion is there to adopt. 2, we have let me jump back to number 2. We do have a speaker card, so we'll hold that special. Number 5, we can approve, and we'll refer that to the city attorney to prepare for an ordinance. Number 6, also no cards. We can receive and file in as much as the Bureau of Sanitation recommendations are incorporated in the item 5 of our action on Council File 08-0603. Number 7, we can move on to consent. Seeing no cards. 8, we'll call special. There are a couple of cards in item number 8. Number 9, we'll call special as well. Cards there. Item 10, we can move on consent. Item 11, we can approve and request the city attorney to prepare the ordinance. Number 12, we'll call special, and as much as we have cards there. Item 13, excuse me. Number 13, we can move on consent. 14, 15, 16, and 17, all on consent. 18, we can call special, given cards that we have. And quite a few, may I act on that one? That's going to be the fun one, Jack. 18. Hang in there. Item 19, we can continue to plumb on May 13th and council on May 27th. Number 19B will continue to plumb on May 13th and council May 27th. Number 19C also continue to plumb May 13th and council May 27th. Item 20, we can continue to plumb on May 27th. 21 will continue to plumb on May 27th and council June 10th. Number 22 has been called special. 23, I want to thank the director for her report. And 24, there's no report, but we need to start finding out why we don't have reports. And we'll get to that issue.
Okay, Chair, just so that you'll know, and member, Councilmember Weezer wanted to make a brief presentation on item 12, so I'd ask that you reconsider that item.
Oh, item
when it
12.
comes- Yes.
Would like to reconsider item 12? That's a big thumbs up. So we'll consider number 12, we'll call that special. And he is in Budget and Finance at this time, I believe.
I'm going to call him. Yes, I call him. I'll call him.
We'll call him. Well, while you're doing that, let's go to item number 2. We do have one card on that one, and that's from Tricia LaBelle. So before we hear from Ms. LaBelle, we can hear from the staff as to the, you just give us a second, Ms. LaBelle. We'll ask the staff if they can speak to it.
Sure.
So we'll know what you're responding to.
Okay.
So item number 2, do we have someone here?
Hi, I'm Cynthia Kuza from the Code Studies,
Okay.
and do you
Can you just give us a brief summary of what this is about, so when we hear the public speak to it, we'll know what they're responding
I
to?
understand. Okay, the essence of it is that we don't have a definition of nightclubs, in our code.
We don't have a definition for nightclubs.
No, we don't. And yet, there are issues of enforcement regarding the differences between restaurants and nightclubs. Many times, restaurants kind of morph into nightclubs and then become public nuisances. And, the restaurants morph into nightclubs and become public nuisances, and neither building nor safety nor the zoning administrators have the ability to, it becomes an individual decision as to whether it's a nightclub or not. We want to define a nightclub so that we can enforce.
So you're going to set basic parameters for a nightclub definition.
Yes.
And that's what we're directing yourself, the planning department, and the Department of Building and Safety to come up with in conjunction with the city attorney.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. LaBelle, Tricia LaBelle, give us your name and address, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tricia LaBelle. I represent the Hollywood Hospitality and Nightclub Owners Coalition in Hollywood. My address is 1652 North Cherokee in Hollywood. 90028 is the zip code. I'm pleased to see this motion come before this board. I think it's long overdue. We do have a lot of abuse of operators in Hollywood currently. As Planning Commission revealed, we have restaurants who have morphed into nightclubs. And it not only deteriorates the community, but it deteriorates an operation that those of us in Hollywood who operate nightclubs have worked hard to become good operators, and those who are bad operators are those who are violating the conditions that we are given and the license that we are granted by the state. And I think that this is something that it needs to be defined a little bit better, but I think we're taking the right step to get there, and I think the definition of a nightclub really incorporates a dance hall permit and a live entertainment. Those are the two key aspects in a nightclub that need to be in the definition of a nightclub. And I think if restaurants do not have those permits, Type 47 license, which most of the operations in Hollywood we have are operating under a 47 license, which allows food and alcohol service, I think those establishments, if they don't have a nightclub and live entertainment, are the locations and the environments that we're really looking at addressing. I thank you for this opportunity, and please contact me if you have any questions, because this is so vital to what we are doing in Hollywood to improve the community and the redevelopment process, and making sure that the operators who are good operators are staying in business. So
Ms.
thank you.
LaBelle, I'd like to first thank you for coming to City Hall, but most importantly, if you wouldn't mind submitting what you stated in writing.
Sure.
So it can be part of the file, so as the planning team goes through their process, they'll have a reference to your perspective and your concerns and factor that in as they go through their thought process.
Absolutely. I'll draft that letter this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll refer that item to planning and building and safety, and that should take care of that matter. And Roberto, let me get ahead of you. You can't let me do that. What's our next item?
Councilman, our next item is item 8. It's a report from the Planning Department on a list of approved residential projects in the Ventura specific plan area.
Okay. That's item number 8. We have staff here for number 8.
Good afternoon, Councilman and Council. Tom Glick, City Planning Department, Valley Office, with Priya Mahendale with the same office in the Valley.
Great.
We were asked to come back here, I think it was January, where the Plum and Transportation Committee had a joint public hearing on this, and asked the Planning Department to come back with a report on the residential developments that have occurred.
Well, let me do this before you get too far down the line.
I don't want to get too far.
I wanted to suggest that we refer this to the Transportation Committee first and have them engage the issues as it relates to the transportation elements. And then based on their feedback, we'll hear the land use elements. So that way, the council of that district, who I believe was very focused on some of the concerns being raised, could address some of these elements, if you will. Councilman Weiss, would that be, you're comfortable with that? And what we could do is hear from the folks who wrote their speaker cards, but if you just give us a thumbnail sketch of where we're at, so that way they'll know what stage of the game we're in now, and knowing what will be addressed over in transportation. Could you just give us a thumbnail sketch of where we're at?
Okay, when we were here in January, this plan was going in two different paths, or two different ways. The transportation aspect of it, which was to come back and figure out how we could spend the monies that were collected under the plan, the transportation development impact monies over the last 15 years, how could we better spend them? And that was going, Department of Transportation's recommendation was that we needed to amend the plan to be able to spend those monies. The other way was that the Planning Department and Department of Transportation annually were supposed to do an annual report on this plan, much of which was not done. And it included one major component, which was the commercial square footage that had been developed in the specific plan over the life of the plan, or every annual report was supposed to include that. I believe this body or transportation committee, whichever one last time, asked us to come back with the residential numbers that have been developed on the specific plan boundaries over the last 15 years, which we prepared a report and submitted to this committee in mid-March.
So that was the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, I can't do a TV guide version.
Okay, just kidding with you. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll send this to the Transportation Committee, and we'll ask. And thank you for your hard work.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll ask for the following folks to come on up. Give us your name and address. Keep your eye on the 2-minute clock. We have with us Lisa Sarkin, Mark Armbruster, and Joan Lux.
Hello, Lisa Sarkin. I'm here for the Ventura, Coanga, Boulevard Specific Plan Coalition today. We've been meeting for the past several months because we feel that the PRB has totally left us out in the cold. And I believe that the report that you do have from the Planning Department is incorrect, that there was never any intent for residential to be on Ventura Boulevard other than senior housing, which of course doesn't have any cars really, supposedly. And so it's just not written into the plan. There are 3 places in the plan where residential is even mentioned. And if you look further into the plan where the parking calculations are put forth, it doesn't say residential, because no one ever anticipated the type of buildings that have been allowed to be built so far in Encino. They're certainly not mixed use. The plan, in one of the places where it does say residential, it says mixed use. 33% of it has to be mixed use. Not 1 live-work, not 2 live-work. But to get to my point, because I guess we can't do anything about this today, we disagree with opening up the plan to fix something where the intent is obvious. We think it's an error of omission, and that's how the Plum Committee should look at this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Next is Mark Armbruster.
Thank you, Mark Armbruster and Goldsmith, 10940 Wilshire Boulevard, Los Angeles. My Reader's Digest version, so we go to Transportation Committee, is we're just concerned in today's economic environment about adding project impact assessment fees to residential projects, number one. So we'll deal with that at Transportation Committee also. But also I want to point out that the Department of Transportation is already, I think, in another authorized fashion, collecting these impact fees for projects, and that's holding up a current project, for example, that's going on, and we just bringing that to your attention.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Joan Lux.
Good afternoon. My name is Joan Lux. I'm speaking on behalf of the Coinga Pass Neighborhood Association, which is part of the Boulevard. And I am concerned about this because the truth of the matter is whatever language is necessary to collect fees is in the plan itself. And I'm very, very concerned about sending this to planning to have them change something, because in changing it, it will open up the plan. And in doing so, it'll ruin the Ventura Coanga Boulevard's corridor specific plan. And I don't know, the report that I have in front of me, which is for number 8, basically lists all of the projects, which is fine, but it also makes 2 recommendations. And as the previous speaker, Lisa Sarkin, said, the reality is that we never had the vision or the foresight to feel that there was going to be more than just commercial building structures on Ventura Boulevard, and that residential would be built and can be built. So in understanding that fees are being collected for commercial, it would be not a stretch to include fees being collected for residential if that's what's going to be built on the boulevard. And no language is necessary to change it, to open up the plan, the Ventura Coinga specific plan. And so therefore, because of things in the last 10 years, being that people are concerned about, metro stations and developments around metro stations, if we end up, opening up the plan, densification around those areas, in particular Universal, Studios, metro station, and the impacts to Coanga Pass that has no mitigations for their traffic, I will be out of there. It would really be a tragedy to open it up, so I recommend that it not be, if it's a slight, what you would call not an adjustment, a ministerial thing that doesn't require opening it up, so be it. I thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to attending the transportation meetings.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this item will be referred to transportation. We'll come back to planning once we understand a little bit more clearly the transportation policy, how they're going to be dealing with the use of these resources and the whole issue of its relevance to the land use patterns in that corridor. Okay, folks. Next item, Roberto.
The next item, Councilman, is item 9. It's interrelated to item 8. You may want to also send that to T Committee.
Okay. Essentially, can you just read what it says?
Sure. It's a motion, Gruel, Weiss, Reyes. It's directing planning and DOT to come back with an analysis as to the traffic impact fees as it relates to residential development in the area.
Okay, so we'll refer that to transportation. And the only card that's different, since we're doing the same action, is Gordon Murley. Like to come on up, sir? Like to speak again, Ms. Lux? Okay, come on up. And Ms. Sarkin, I know you filled out a card for this item. Thank you, Ms. Sarkin.
Thank you, Councilman Reyes and other members of the committee. Gordon Murley, I live at 4128 Morrow Drive, Woodland Hills, 91364. I'm president of Woodland Hills Homeowners Organization. And my general comments to you are that you have to collect fees. Warner Center had a problem where they didn't collect fees, and all of a sudden you get a plethora of residential developments which are not well planned, and they don't work. And I sat on the original committee, and I think, as the other speakers have told you, a lot of it is interpretation from what the intent was. I know what the intent was, that it was to make it a commercial corridor, not a residential corridor. And we have one in Woodland Hills where, since we couldn't put the PIA on it, we said they had to provide transportation from 6 in the morning till 9 at night. It hasn't been built yet, but there really isn't any enabling legislation. If they decide not to put their transportation in, that's part of the condition, there's really no penalties for them not to do it. And I think you've got to start looking at it if you're going to keep your infrastructure at the level that it operates. And developers will go where their fees are the lowest, not necessarily the thing that is best for the community or the city. So I think we have to look very hard at making sure that the infrastructure can be supported and not give away lack of payment of fees as a reward to the developers. The city overall suffers when this happens. So we would hope that your recommendation would be to look very hard at the fees being collected as was the intent for anything that went in on Boulevard when it was originally passed by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnley. Ms. Joan Lux.
Thank you again, Joan Lux, Coinga Pass Neighborhood Association.
No, go ahead.
That was the quickest 1 minute I ever heard in my life.
I didn't push the button. So
That's okay, thank you. Per the actual agenda item itself, it says whether the plan's traffic impact fees should be applied to residential development within the area. Absolutely, because it was intended originally in 91 that it was basically for commercial. Now it's going to be, there are buildings that are residential as well as commercial. So obviously it should be for both. It doesn't make any sense just to restrict it to commercial, but it should not require opening up the specific plan in any way. This is a ministerial, situation, and monies that are now being collected are supposed to be used, the fees are supposed to be used for the major intersections along the Ventura, Coanga Boulevards, and they aren't. 7 million of it has been ensconced or about to be ensconced to something else without any say by the public. That money is needed for the infrastructure for that area, and it should stay where it's supposed to be. Now, I really appreciate it, but please do not open up the specific plan. It is not needed. The information, the data is in the specific plan, already exists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Nix. Okay, so that takes care of those two items. We'll refer them to transportation. We'll hear them back here in Plum. And next item, Roberto.
The next item, Councilman, is a report from the mayor, the planning department, and the CPC. It has to do with a general plan amendment and a concurrent zone change for the construction of 32 single-family units in a small lot subdivision in CD 12.
I believe this is the item that Councilman Huizar wanted to participate in. Staff here to let him know that we're about to hear the staff report. Can you hold on a second? There you go. I want to make sure Councilman Huizar has the benefit of the... Okay. All right, sir. Please introduce yourself.
Tom Glick, good afternoon again. It's a lot of Tom Glick today. City Planning, Valley Office. This case is a plan amendment and a zone change in Northridge. It's on White Oak. It's a small lot subdivision. You read most of that. What isn't in the project description is it includes ad areas. Predominantly, the applicant is asking for a small lot subdivision. He came in, the developer asked for a zone change and a plan amendment to RD2, and he asked for 36 units in a small lot subdivision. And as part of the environmental analysis, we required them to do ad areas. The ad areas would not include the zone change, but the ad areas would include the plan amendment changes to the low-medium 2 designation on both sides of the street. So the applicant, in effect, asked for low-medium 2 and RD2. Planning Commission, on the recommendation of the Planning Department, recommended RD3 because that was more in keeping with the surrounding neighborhood, and scaled the project back down to 32 units and not to its 36 requested by the applicant. So, in keeping with the surrounding neighborhood, there were a whole host of conditions imposed upon the development, including limiting the number of residential units on the perimeters of the lot. This is a perfect 100,000 square foot lot. Planning Commission pretty much in agreement said that, look, you're still in a single-family neighborhood. We'd like to see the small lot subdivision observe some basic area restrictions, 16 feet along the northern and southern property lines, frontage requirements, no fences higher than 3.5 feet, similar things to keep the small lot subdivision in in keeping with the surrounding neighborhood. Now, at Planning Commission, there are several people in opposition to the project, claiming that the White Oak corridor is pretty much that corridor that they did not want to see single-family moved from, that they wanted to keep White Oak as that single-family corridor. However, if you actually look at the history of the neighborhood to the west, which is also adjacent to the Cal State Northridge. Cal State Northridge has a master plan, and really that's what Planning Commission sold the project on. Planning Commission. They saw that this neighborhood, this White Oak corridor, was transitioning towards a higher development, multifamily. A lot of because of the Cal State Northridge expansion. So you see a lot of zone changes that have happened in the areas to the west. So this was the natural transition. This was my opinion as the hearing officer and the recommendation body to Planning Commission, and what Planning Commission ultimately agreed with. So
as you describe your...
And I meant low medium 1 was recommended for all sites. Excuse me, I said low medium 2. They requested low medium 2.
Right.
Planning Commission gave them low medium 1.
Okay, but as you define this space, what I'm hearing you say and given your report, that within the qualities of this proposed zone, that you are building in a buffer zone so that you have an easier transition from what's already happened on one end of the proposed zone to what's happening adjacent to it, which is right behind. Would these be the backyards of the properties?
Yes, they would.
So you have enough of a buffer between the main structures, the backyard, and the backyards of those that you are... I just want to make sure it's clear what you're doing here.
Okay. I thought he was going to bring the plan amendment map.
But you did accomplish that goal.
Yes, we did. And the community's concern, if you actually go to the west of White Oak, to the west of this project, it's all RA. It's all very low, or low 1 RA lots. The community is concerned that this is a trend that's not going to stop at White Oak. But White Oak, if you actually look at the corridor and you look at the development patterns...
From the microphone is fine. Oh, you have extra copies? Good.
Oh, there are 3 different ones? Well, they can... the proposed is the one you want to look at. If you look at the development trends, what we've recommended is low medium 2 transitioning to low medium 1 transitioning to the single family areas. So White Oak becomes the transitional point between the higher density western side, and then you have Cal State Northridge obviously to the far west. But the premise ultimately was that Cal State Northridge is expanding, this neighborhood is changing, and the White Oak corridor is, frankly, while the tipping point to the community we saw as a good transitional corridor.
So a map of trees that are being protected as well?
Yes.
Okay. And that in of itself will influence how these structures will be built?
Yes.
Okay.
And it is a small lot subdivision. The difference between this development and all the developments that have happened west of this is all the developments that have happened to the west of this have been multifamily, high-rise apartment complexes or condo complexes, multifamily buildings. These are small lot subdivisions. So they achieve the purposes of at least still giving the sense of a small lot single family homes. We also recommend a focal point in the middle, which was a 2,500 square foot tot lot. And I know the applicant has submitted, or a rec lot, the applicant has submitted letter with concerns about what Planning Commission did. They did not want to see the 16 feet side yards to the north and the south as Commission had recommended. And they did not want the 2,500-foot rec lot. They only wanted a 2,100-foot rec lot. But if you actually look at the development that was approved by Commission, which I hope he brought, the one that Commission this what commission approved? Because, okay. You can actually see the development that was approved by commission, 32 units, focal point, driveways that interconnect, so there's pedestrian movement. The project that was originally submitted at hearing was a project quite different from this. It was 36 units pretty much packed in to there. There was no focal point in the middle. There was no pedestrian movement between the north side and the south side of the development. And what we felt came as a resolution was you're seeing something which is kind of keeping the same character along White Oak. We limited the number of houses that could be packed along White Oak or put along White Oak, as well as the other corners. We've put protections in on the eastern boundary of the property adjacent to the single family, lighting, no balconies, to protect that. So felt that the RD3 was an appropriate transition. The low medium 1 was appropriate transition. And remember, we're doing this for the whole corridor between Lassen and Superior, Lassen to the north, Superior to the south.
So it's a transition with some levels of compatibility based on the character of the housing in the area. Okay.
Now, the community, after the commission, took umbrage to me using the word blighted area. Okay, it is not a blighted area. There are some houses in disrepair, and there are some houses that could stand some rehabilitation. The council office supports that this is a transitional zone.
Okay. So, any other questions from my colleagues for Mr. Glick? Okay, we'll move on public comment. Seeing no questions. Thank you, Mr. Glick.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, don't we usually carry our own maps?
Do I see what?
Don't we usually carry our own maps when we're making presentations? You can say yes or no.
I relied and I will never do it again.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
All right, folks. We have with us Tom Stimnock and Don Dwiggins. Mr. Stimnock?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Tom Stemnock with Planning Associates, 4040 Vineland Avenue, Suite 108, Studio City 91604. I submitted a letter to the members of the committee, both to the clerk and to each of you individually. We agree with the commission's decision that the very low medium 1 should be the appropriate designation, and the RD3 also is an appropriate designation. That cost us 4 dwelling units, and we had to redesign our project. And when we submitted our revised map to the commission, at the end of the hearing, there were 6 of the conditions out of probably 35 or 40 Q conditions that we had a problem with. 4 relate to the setbacks, 1 relates to the size of the recreation area. We have a 2,100 square foot recreation area. We started with 1,000, and we more than doubled it. And the commission made it 2,500. And 1 related to the height of the fences. In the RA zone, fences are permitted to be on the property line up to 6 foot high. And that's what exists up and down the street. This is all RA zoning. So in keeping with the intent of the small lot subdivision, we were trying to provide a front lot design that was compatible and reflected the existing development. There's 2 blocks here that we're changing the general plan designation and the zoning on, but the rest of the property to the south of Superior is very well kept and certainly is going to stay that way for a long, long time. So the commission, for some reason, said, we want you to limit your fence to 42 inches, and we're asking that you change that and make it a 6-foot open fence, the same as all the other RA lots and other development in the area. I can go through the setbacks if you wish.
Not really.
Okay.
I read the letter.
Thank you.
And
Any
I
other
understand
questions?
the report of the staff, and I think I understand the intention. Unless my colleagues would like to go through that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Don Dwiggins?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Don Dwiggins, First Vice President of the Northridge East Neighborhood Council, a resident at 9845 Shoshone Avenue in Northridge, behind and somewhat to the north of the proposed plan. I'd like to begin by reading a motion that the Northridge East Neighborhood Council passed back when the plan was originally proposed before us. Quote, By recommending the additional area, the Planning Department is implicitly admitting that the proposed project is out of compliance with the Los Angeles General Plan and the Northridge Community Plan, and out of character with the neighborhood. Rather than requiring the development to conform to the plans, however, the implied resolution to this discrepancy is to change the plan to accommodate the developer. No justification is given for this other than City Planning Commission policy to ensure general plan consistency and compatibility. This policy is not smart growth by any reasonable definition of the term. Rather, by acquiescing to the ad hoc and piecemeal development driven by developers whose interests are narrow and short-term in nature, it's the kind of thinking and acting that got the city into the current crisis in the first place. Therefore, the NENC board voted to oppose the community plan amendment and encourage the developer to submit a different development proposal that conforms to the current city plans and maintains the character of the neighborhood, unquote. In other words, we're not opposing development on those projects or even that 4 units be replaced by 4 other units. We are simply requesting that the development conform to the existing plan and the existing zoning without an overall review of the general community plan. Also on the matter of setbacks, I don't know what Mr. Stemnock requested on that, but from the standpoint of many of the homeowners in the area, and personally I request that the setbacks be approved as the commission specified them, 16 feet on the sides, 20 feet on the back. And finally, we had some interest in items 3 and 4 also relate to Northridge. I'd like to know what the disposition was of those. I missed that somehow.
I'm sorry, but can you repeat the question?
Yeah, items 3 and 4 on the agenda, this is separate from the current thing. What was the disposition of those items?
Those items, sir, were adopted by the committee, and the motions will be referred to the city council.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dwiggins. Questions from my colleagues for the staff?
Yes, I got, is the planning department, have you had a chance to review some of these conditions that have
Mr. Glick, can you come on up?
Have you had a chance to review some of these conditions that the applicant is seeking, the additional conditions they've submitted today?
Yes, I had a chance to review what the applicant has brought up.
Yeah, most of these, would they conform to the local community, to the local neighborhood?
Oh, I know them all.
Any of them that stand out in particular? Or
well, the top lot, the recreation lot, I know it's 400
What number is that?
I know it's 400 feet. It was condition number 13, A13.
A13.
We had a recreation lot of 2,500 square feet.
Uh-huh. Yes.
The applicant has requested that it be scaled back to 2,100 square feet. The reason I came up with 25 is this area is woefully unserved by recreation. There is not a regional park in Northridge, and the closest park to this site is probably 2 miles away. So,
how big is 400?
I could have gone higher on the rec lot, but I didn't want the applicant.
What would 400 square feet give us in that area? Would it additional, any type of games that are going to be played, or is it open space, passive space? What is planned for that? Do you envision?
I envision a small little play area, maybe a picnic area where the residents can go.
If we do the 2,100 or the 2,500, would that change the design of their project in any way?
Not that I saw.
Not that you saw, so it wouldn't change anything at all.
Okay, they might come up and tell me different, but it looked like it could be done, but I'm not an architect, but I didn't think 400 square feet will affect density.
Can I ask the applicant about that change? Would that change your design at all or inhibit you from achieving your goals and designing
the problem with the additional 500 square feet is that, and I'll have to pull up the plan here.
Mm-hmm. Chair? Yeah, sure. Well, actually, you would need for everyone to see, so if you could go back there and just...
Basically, I'm talking to the microphone.
Yeah, I need to talk into the microphone as well, please.
To achieve the additional 400 feet, we would have to take a portion of the rear yards of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the units. And each of those rear yards are now, the biggest one is 15 feet and the smallest one is 13 feet. They would be reduced by about 5 feet. So you'd end up with a rear yard patio back area, private area for each of those units that is just about unusable. We felt it was more important for those 6 units to have a more usable rear yard than it was to have 400 feet in.
So it would take from people's yards?
Yes,
and
6 of the units.
6, how big are their yards right now?
The biggest is 15 by, approximately 30.
Uh-huh.
And the smallest is 13 by the same 30.
Okay, thank you. Planning Department, anything else that stands out that...
Let me just address that.
Sure.
I mean, that would be a nice explanation, no offense, if they weren't asking for the property lines, the setbacks and the property lines to go from 16 down to 11. So they're trying to get more on the eastern and, the northern and southern property lines as well.
I see, okay.
So how does that explain them reducing the side yards on those 2 areas? Commission asked for 16 to the north and to the south. They're asking for 11. So they're okay with making those backyards smaller for those properties.
Yeah. What condition are we talking? We're talking A9, right?
Yes, we are.
Yes, setback from the southern property line. Applicant, would you care to explain that on the point raised by the department?
The 16-foot yards were recommended by the commission. We had indicated 11-foot side yards. The RA zone and the yards observed by the existing single-family houses to the north and south are 10-foot required yards, and the RD3 zone would require only a 5 to 7-foot side yard.
Mm-hmm.
So we're providing something greater than the single-family zone would allow. The commission, I think, was looking to provide a little additional protection. There is landscaping and there are solid walls that may go as high as 8 feet if we were allowed to get a variance. Otherwise, it would be 6 foot high. That would buffer those yards from the adjoining 2 single-family residential areas, single-family homes.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
2 more points. Let's go back to his first one. I don't see a problem with modifying condition A5 to allow them to do this closer within the setback area. However, I do take note of A6. In order to keep the White Oak Corridor kind of looking like still a single-family neighborhood, 6-foot fences do not achieve that. So I would recommend that we keep that at 42 inches. And I think I don't have a problem with condition A7 as long as, they want to average the setbacks. That's fine.
Let's say that again.
The last one is A7. I actually really don't understand. I've tried to call the applicant. I don't understand really what they're asking in A7. The intent was to have 6 dwelling units, no more than 6 dwelling units along each of the property lines to the north and the south property lines. So they couldn't do 8 or 9 along there. So people who happen to be living in a single-family home to the north or to the south didn't have a bunch of houses. So we limited the number of houses that were on the peripheries. So I'm really trying to understand what the applicant is asking for here with 4 central units shall observe 18-foot setbacks. Looks like they want to have variable, but I don't know if they want to still be limited to the 6 units. It's not clear to me.
So what do you recommend?
I'd like him to at least come up and explain it, if that's okay.
The commission had recommended that these 6 homes along here all have a 20-foot rear yard setback to the rear yards of the RA lots that back on this way. Our plan proposes that these 4 in the central area have an 18-foot rear yard setback. This house and this house sides to the rear, and we're asking for a 12-foot side yard there. This house, none of these would have balconies, and these that side on would have no windows on the second floor. And then there would be the 6 to 8 foot fence there with landscaping. So
Okay.
what
And
you
the
have
commission had
is-
actually recommended 20, right? And you're asking
Commission had
the
recommended
four
20
to-
all the way across. We're saying 4 at 18 and 2 side-on at 12.
Oh, okay, okay, thank you.
Okay, so I guess my same point would be with the reductions of the northern and the southern property lines from 16 to 11, the same thing is here, Commission 1 to 20, and that's what we would like to see too.
Okay.
That the setback be maintained at 20, not lessened to 18.
How long did the commission deliberate on this?
Probably about 40 minutes. They did not give, they gave a lot of time to the applicant and to the city staff, but there were
So in total with deliberation, with presentations?
about 40 minutes.
Okay.
And, okay.
Well, Councilmember, I'd like to move that we move forward Commission's action and include the recommendations, the conditions by the applicant on this item. I understand the council member's office is supportive of this, of that, so I'd like to move that item.
Want to move with these changes?
Yes, with those conditions.
My hesitation there is that I could agree with A5, but I wouldn't want to approve A6 and continue.
That's the one, yeah.
And my main thinking here is that because it is a sensitive area going from a transition phase, it sounds like the staff and the commission tried their best to create a buffer zone given how this development is going to move forward with these setbacks. I would be supportive, but I'm trying to maintain that character of that transition and kind of protect both sides, knowing that that was the intent. All the other conditions, you want to approve all the conditions that he laid out?
Yes.
Mr. Glick?
On that item number A6, that is a big change, or at least I think it is. Any comment by the applicant on that?
Yes, what I tried to explain, the RA zone permits by right that fences may be on the property line and may be 6 foot tall in the RA zone. This block, the block to the south, and then the blocks further south that are going to remain RA all have fences that are 6 foot high on the property line. They're open. They're not necessarily a wooden fence. And our plan is to have a wrought iron fence with pilasters, and it would be that same height, and it gives that same visual characteristic that you have with the existing single family to the south.
Okay, so this is a point counterpoint. Mr.
Yes.
Glick?
Can I
Sure.
just say one thing again? This isn't an RA zone anymore. This is an RD3 zone.
So that justification doesn't apply?
Exactly. If he wants to keep it an RA zone, I'm sure that would be okay with the community. But it's an RD3 zone. And it's a discretionary action. So we felt we wanted to keep the RA character to a degree. 6 foot high fences that are made out of...
Well, let's do this then, because I'm really focused on maintaining the spirit of your intent, which is to not create an impact on the surrounding residential character on one side, while understanding that there's a change on the other side. And I think you tried to put together a buffer zone based on the plans and the detail that you laid out. So of all because I want to also support Councilman Rizar in his intent, but I want to be very clear, which conditions would you support, Mr. Glick, that doesn't take away from the goals that you set in the commission on making sure that we kept this buffer zone, if you will?
Okay, as one person from the community testified, they don't want to see these houses come closer to the residential zones.
No, I understand that, but be very clear. Go through the letter, because you started off, yes, on A5,
I'm fine.
no on A6.
I'm fine with A5, no on A6, and no
A7?
on the rest. No on the-
A7?
A7?
A7 is a no.
A7's a no, A8's a no, A9's a no, and A13 is a no.
Because it violates the intent of your efforts. But you do say yes to A5.
Yes.
Okay, so...
I mean, this is no indication, but the community brought out about 20 people at Planning Commission. And he might have a different opinion, but they're not here today because maybe at the end of this, they are happy with what Planning Commission had done.
Okay.
Okay?
Councilor, so I'd love to support what you like.
Well,
but
I wanted to support what the local council member is supporting, and having heard these items, I would agree with those. I do find the one on A6 that it is a big change, and it is discretionary as to what type of, visually, it's mostly a visual issue, I think, at the end of the day, of what type of fence you would like to see, but that's, fence art is, difference of opinion. I guess.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the local council member wants. I haven't heard an opinion, and I didn't want to bring them forward, so they're not here. So I wanted to err on the side of the caution of the staff, and I'd like to support the staff recommendation with no on A6, put it this way, no on everything except for A5. But that's different, than we have different votes on this one, right?
Yeah. Everything except at 5?
And we say yes on A5, but everything else is no, based on the input from the staff.
And that's your vote, right?
Yeah, that's
Your
right.
vote,
Okay, so that's 1 and 1, Councilor Weiss?
Did I get a second on which one are we seconding?
We're trying to get there. We're not there yet, Barbara.
Okay.
Hold on there.
Don't make a decision.
Hang tough. So far, we have two separate votes.
Okay, there's council staff here from the district, if you still want to hear testimony from the council office.
I'm not going to force them to do anything, so it's up to you. Right. If you'd like to come to the microphone, you can express your opinion. I want to keep you from speaking. I just want to respect your discretion.
But I think clarity needs to be made. Phyllis Winger, representing Councilmember Greg Smith. We did review the letter, and the councilman did, in fact, accept the changes that are suggested in the letter. With respect to the fence, that is going to be part of larger changes to the community, and what is there now will not remain as it is now. So this is the beginning of a future change.
So you would like to support the Planning Associates' recommendations? Okay. Okay, so, I'm sorry, sir. So that'll be a 2-1 vote.
2-1 vote. Which way does Mr. Weiss vote?
He's supporting you.
Okay.
He's supporting you, so that's fine. So that'll be the action of this committee.
Would you repeat the action again?
Roberto, please.
Barbara, I believe that Councilman Reyes is in disagreement, and he agrees with the planning department. And I believe that Councilman Weezer and Wise are in agreement with CD 12 and the letter submitted by Planning Associates.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That'll be the order of this committee. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, folks. Next item, Roberto.
Item 18 is the next item, council members. It's an appeal by Athena Novak and Renee Barnasconi, and they're appealing the action of the South Valley APC as it relates to a proposed single-family dwelling and as it relates to the proposed demolition of a single-family dwelling and construction of a 15-unit apartment building, and planning staff is present. And a correction, the ordinance denotes that this project is in CD3. In actuality, it's in CD5.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I see, Mr. Chair, by the stack of cards in your hand and by the number of people who are here today, that we have quite a large public comment. My office and I have a long record of participating in this matter. We've testified in favor of the community position several times, and so my recommendation would be that you come up with an equitable way to put a time limit on the comments so we can get to the meat of the matter.
Okay, so let's do the staff presentation, last questions. And then, given the number of cards we do have, we'll hear more clearly the perspective of the council member, and then we'll go from there.
Good morning, council members. My name is Kevin Jones. I served as the hearing officer for this project. This was heard in a public hearing on September 24, 2007. It involves the demolition of the photograph of the house that you see there on the top row. And the request was for a zone change that is compatible with the land use designation from RA1 to RD1.5. The commission then on November 8th considered our recommendation, which was a recommendation of a disapproval of all of the requested actions relative to the zone change. Just so that the council officer will know, at the public hearing we had more than 75 people in attendance at the public hearing. 40 speakers spoke. Only 2 spoke in support of the project. The Area Planning Commission for South Valley conducted its public hearing on November 8th with also, once again, 50 in attendance and only 2 in support of the project. Also, Council District Office Number 5 supplied testimony at both the public hearing and at the Area Planning Commission, recommending or concurring with the staff report that recommended disapproval of the project. This really boils down to an applicant that sought the discretionary action to change the zone of a single-family residential neighborhood to a multifamily use to establish a condominium project on the site. This is on a local street. The problem was caused by the land use designation that was established in the early 80s that continued along White Oak from the Ventura Freeway down to Ventura Boulevard. The low medium 2 land use designation was established on both sides of White Oak, and that followed the precepts of the previous community plans and city policy to find multifamily or establish multifamily uses along larger corridors, which would be primarily White Oak in this area. As I stated before, Weddington is a local street. And one of the consequences of this project, or the land use designation that we no longer do or would more carefully assess when we're applying land use designation, are lot configuration. In this particular case, the lots are very deep due to the RA zone that was in existence as it fronts along White Oak and in this entire area to the east of White Oak. When it got to 6 lots, 3 on the north and 3 on the south side of Weddington, it included 6 single-family houses. That block actually has approximately 10 to 12 houses for the full length of Weddington going east from White Oak. And that was the unintended consequence of using a land use designation that stretched along the full length without recognizing the depths of the lots. Currently, would not use that practice and would actually be a little more careful with the application of the land use designations at this time. Based upon that fact, the 6 policies and objectives of the community plan, we followed those policies and objectives and also looked at the general plan for the City of Los Angeles that supports the retention and the protection of single-family residential areas to the extent possible. This project was incompatible with that established single-family residential use that is in that area. I'll step aside for any questions that you might have.
When you looked at the criteria, the notion of compatibility was the most profound factor that you evaluated?
That is correct, Councilmember.
Okay. Councilmember?
Mr. Chair, just in the interest of saving time, maintaining a quorum, and moving the committee along, let me just offer the following introductory thoughts before we hear from...
Mr. Weiss, could we hear from the appellant first?
Let's do that. Fine. I thought you wanted me to do that now.
Yeah.
I'm just listening to you, Mr. Chair.
We do have the appellant here, and then we can go from there. Okay, would the appellant like to come on up? Give us your name and address.
Tim McCosker, Christensen Glazer, 10250 Constellation Boulevard, City of Los Angeles. Thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it. Chairman, how much time do I have as the appellant's representative?
How much time do you really need? I'm not speaking to an attorney.
I can name that tune in about 10 minutes if you like.
Oh, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
You're not kidding.
No, I can go a little faster if you give me a chance to come back and rebuttal.
We'll give you more than 2 minutes. How's that?
10 is more than 2. Thanks. No, thank you very much. I can do that. As you can see, I represent the appellant in this matter, and Weddington, as you've just had identified for you, bisects White Oak. White Oak on each side is high multifamily residential. We are the second house in from White Oak. If we were the first house in from White Oak, I don't think we would be here. Well, we might be here, but we might be the responding party. We are the second house in. Across the street, the first house in is actually supportive of the application for the obvious reasons. They want the property owner wants the benefit of the general plan designation. The second house in, immediately across the street from us, is also supportive of our application because they want the benefit of the general plan designation. In fact, if we were across the street, I don't think we would be here except maybe as responding parties. Let me tell you what I think, simply stated, and I wish I could make this more complicated, but I really can't make it more complicated. What I think this is about is that there's a general plan designation of low-medium residential. There's a general plan designation for low-medium residential. There's an underlying zoning, current zoning, of R1, single-family residential. It is inconsistent with the general plan designation. That's what this whole case is about. Let me tell you what I don't think this is about. This case is not about the environmental effects of the project. We have a mitigated negative declaration which has been certified. This case is not about any dispute over what the general plan designation is. I mean, I think everyone will agree the general plan designation, whether it was intended or not, we have to presume the actions of the government, especially those that are left standing for 20 years, are intended that this is low, medium residential zoning. There is no dispute. This is also not about what's consistent with that zoning. There is no dispute. In fact, the staff report is what I would submit to a court, if a court were looking at this, that the consistent zoning designation is either going to be RD 1.5 or RD 2. There's no dispute about that. It is not about that. In the staff report, there's a mention of spot zoning. I would say if we were each given chances to have take-backs, that would probably be a take-back, because this is not about, I'm sure staff would like to have that back, this is not about spot zoning. The evidence for this being spot zoning is that why would you have RD 1.5 snuggled up against RD 2 and single-family residential? Well, the short answer is you always want RD 1.5 snuggled up next to RD 2, or RD 2 next to RD 2, or RD 1.5 next to RD 1.5. But perfectly consistent. In fact, that's what the general plan intended. The reason why across the street from us is single-family residential is because the zoning is lagging behind for 20 years now, is lagging behind the general plan designation, and illegally so. Illegally so. There's no dispute that there's a single-family residential unit sitting on this property, but there's also no dispute that the zoning of the city has to be consistent with the general plan, not the general plan being made consistent or not ignoring the general plan in consistency with the zoning. And I hope this is not about, again on the list of what this is not about, I hope this is not about the density bonus ordinance. It would be too soon to throw that away and say we can't do a zoning amendment to make our zoning consistent with the general plan because somebody might take advantage of the density bonus. We've worked too hard for the density bonus. I've added another one to the list I didn't intend. This is also not item number 12 on your agenda. On item number 12, not surprisingly, somebody wanted to have a multifamily project, and so what did we look at first? The first thing we looked at was the general plan. The general plan wasn't right, so they applied for a general plan amendment. We are not item 12. We're not asking for a general plan amendment. We're asking for the city to make itself legally consistent with the general plan. Now, I should talk about the staff report for just a minute because that's what's going to be most important to your determination, I hope, and that'll be important to any subsequent review of this matter to the council or beyond. The staff report properly makes 9 findings. Excuse me, there are 9 different findings, it just so happens, for this collection of requests. Of those 9 findings, there are 6 that are actually in the positive for this application, and there are 3 that I would say are in the negative. If you look at the staff report and you look at the findings, there's a finding with which I agree that the general plan and the zoning requested, the RD 1.5, is consistent. Proper finding. There's a finding that there is no stress on the transportation plan, no stress on the sewer system, no stress on streetlights, no fish and game issues. Not surprising, you have to make those findings. And then probably the second most significant finding is that there is no environmental effect which has not been mitigated to a level of insignificance. The mitigated negative declaration certified for the project. What are the three negative findings? There's a negative finding, interestingly enough, and I think the opposition will argue my case. I mean, I'm arguing consistency. It's interesting that the staff report argues consistency and says, well, what about the policies and the goals of the general plan? The policy and the goal of the general plan is to protect R1 single-family neighborhoods. I'll go real fast. To protect R1 single-family. Well, great. But does the goal and objective of the general plan saying protect single-family mean that we're going to ignore the land use map of the general plan? Because that argument, taken to its logical conclusion, means that we cannot have anything but R1 in the city, and you'll never rezone property, and you won't do general plan amendments. Now, so why did we lose so badly below? And I'll go one more minute, okay, Councilman?
Okay, please wind up.
We lost, why did we lose badly below? It wasn't because of the law. We didn't lose on the law. We're right on the law. And I would say it wasn't because of the policy. We didn't lose because of policy. The policy of the city has to be to have our general planning and our zoning consistent. It has to be. And a policy of the city, maybe not an overarching policy, is for promoting housing. And I'd also say a policy of the city couldn't be to run away from density bonuses when they present themselves. I don't know what policy the city would present itself that says we're going to ignore the general plan. We're going to say the land use map is inapplicable to a project because folks come out and oppose. So maybe it's about politics, and there's nothing wrong with politics. Politics are, neighborhood concerns, counting noses, seeing how many people show up, and how many people show up on one side and the other is fine. It's good. But I'd also say that would be a bad reason to turn down this application because it's creating a false hope. The false hope is that you can actually say we're going to leave our general plan inconsistent with our zoning or leave our zoning inconsistent with our general plan and turn down a project which is consistent. I think that, in fact, would be false hope for the neighborhood. So I would ask you to grant the appeal.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Okay, we have Victor Martin and Renee Berdasconi and Latino Novak on behalf of the appellants.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Victor Martin. I'm the Director of Land Use at the AFRIAC Consulting Group, and I'm here representing the appellant. What I'd like to discuss a little bit about is the community outreach that I had done with the appellant regarding this project. I've been working with Mr. McCosker's firm and with Renee and with Athena to make sure that I was able to help them as much as I could with the community outreach. Part of my job in land use and planning is understanding the importance of doing that, which is one reason why the appellant had hired us to help them with that. What I'd like to do is just briefly go over some of the highlights over the past few months with respect to the community outreach that I had done regarding this case. We began work earlier this year in January, and prior to that time, Ms. Novak and Mr. Bernasconi had been doing their own outreach, and then I had taken it over from that point. And until it was about February that I had begun really reaching out to the neighbors. And part of the strategy that I had focused on was, well, they had begun with the neighborhood, and what I wanted to make sure that I had taken steps that I needed to do to make sure that the people who were most impacted by this project, particularly the 12 people who live the closest, knew that they can come to me and they can talk to me about any of their concerns. What I had done in late February was to focus on sending the 12 people who had lived closest to the project a letter saying, here I am, if you have your concerns, call me, and then we can discuss that. And then see what response I had gotten. I had also sent letters to the apartment complex on White Oak Avenue in addition to the homes. I did get one call back from one neighbor, but other than that, I had not received any other calls with respect to this project. Right now, we do have 3 homeowners who who have gone on record as supporting the project, in addition to Holy Martyrs and the Church of Latter-day Saints, both on White Oak Avenue. We also have 175 signatures from members of the community. And what we did was we made sure that when we had done the outreach with these members of the community, we made sure that they were very aware of the background, of the land use aspects of that, and then they were able to pledge their support. And basically what I'd like to do is I'd like to just conclude in emphasizing that my door has always been open to any neighbors who have had issues with this project since the time that I've been working on this, of course, in that I ask that you please grant this appeal or grant this project, please, for Mr. Bernasconi and Ms. Novak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. And our last speakers on the appellant side, would you like to come on up? Yeah, Renee Bernasconi and Athena Novak? Okay. All right. We do have a slew of cards here on the other side, and we call up Mr. Mark Armbruster.
Thank you. Mark Armbruster again, Armbruster and Goldsmith, 10940 Wilshire Boulevard. We represent the Amestoy Estates homeowners, and as you know, members of the committee, most of the time we're known for representing developers of projects in the city. This project, we believe, is a bad project. No matter what the sugarcoating they put on it, it's a project that does not belong in this area. It's a 45-foot high, four-story building.
Could you just hold his time for 1 second? Just hold his time. I'm just getting a kick of watching you smile and say those words. I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, it's just fun, but continue on, all right?
Well, we like to represent good projects that we're proud of, and I would say good projects that we're proud of, and this project, I think it's in the wrong place. I mean, can you imagine if in your single-family, 1- and 2-story residential neighborhood, somebody came up and right smack dab in the middle of it was sticking a 4-story, 45-foot high building. You wouldn't like it. It's incompatible. It's inconsistent with the city planning policies and with the policies and objectives of the plan. I won't go through all those as the planning department has already done in their reports. Furthermore, planning staff, the staff already went through this, recommended denial. The area planning commission unanimously voted denial because the project does not belong in this place. And as my friend Mr. Bukosker said, he said, this is really simple. This is really about whether or not the zoning should be consistent with the general plan. Well, if you look at that analysis, I think it's really taking all of the discretionary authority from the city. You're saying this is really just a zone change. The zone change is merely a ministerial action. You have to approve this. You have no choice. And there is ample law and ample authority supporting the contrary proposition. Matter of fact, there's a case, Miro Development Corporation versus San Diego, Court of Appeals case, that holds just the opposite, that you do have the discretion and you do have the authority to not adopt a zone change just for that reason. If I can just have a couple more minutes, and then I've asked a lot of the opponents here to be very brief in their comments because of your schedule also. But so we think there's ample legal authority for you to deny this zone change. It's incompatible with the area. There is a vast amount of community opposition. I think some petitions have been shown to you or spread around by the AFRED group allegedly asking for or showing support for this project. But ironically, in their petition, there is not one single mention of this project. It's a petition saying, we support community plan consistency. Well, I think we all know what all those things are all about, and it really has no bearing on the project. Last couple comments I want to make is that I don't think that the CEQA analysis is irrelevant, as been suggested. There was a mitigated negative declaration, but I think there is a fair argument based upon a lot of testimony given by the homeowners of traffic in the area, this being a cut-through street, that there could be impacts upon a couple of local intersections, that there's a fair argument that there could be traffic impacts and there should be a traffic study done in this case. Additionally, to suggest that there are no aesthetic impacts on the project and that they can be mitigated is also inappropriate and also has not been mitigated.
Okay,
So in summary, I'm concluding, I think we'd urge you to deny the zone change and adopt the Area Planning Commission's action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask the councilman if he'd like to make a few comments before we go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope the folks here from the community understand that I don't construe anything by my kidding of Mr. Armbruster other than it was fun to kid him. It doesn't speak to the merits of the issue. I want to say a few words about the merits of the issue at this point, Mr. Chair. And I want to say that if ever there's a case which I've seen where literally you could say that both sides are right, it's this case, because I do believe that Mr. McCosker has made a very impressive case on the law. And I don't think that I don't think that there are legal shenanigans here. I don't think they're pulling a fast one. I think it's a good, impressive case on the law. And I think that that the advocates for the applicant have done a very strong job. And frankly, when it comes to working the community side, they have done as strong a job as you can do with a case like this. Having said that, the reason that they've been able to make a strong case on the law is that, from my perspective, there is an anomaly in the law which appears to permit this structure. And that's why my recommendation to Mr. Reyes is going to be to side with the community and deny the appeal here, because I don't think that it is ultimately fair to the community when there is this, I'm calling it an anomaly in the law. It's much more complicated than that, but that's in essence what it is. It's a hole. It's a hole in the Encino zoning code. Whatever the opposite of spot zoning is, it's a spot hole. It's a hole in a spot. And where that spot is, we would have the only 4-story multifamily building on a block. And I don't know, I'm not, as well versed as Mr. McCosker is in explaining how that hole got there in that spot, but it's not fair to construe that hole against the community, given what I think is really the manifest incompatibility of the project. Now, I don't blame the applicant for wanting to build there. I don't blame the applicant for looking at the zoning and saying, here is an opportunity. And I don't blame the advocates for the applicant from coming forward and making the case for it. I mean, I don't think they're not crazy. They didn't just make this up. They didn't create this situation. And it would be different if the project, say, fronted on White Oak and not on a residential street. I think it would make it a different situation, but that's not the situation that we have here. The city is entitled, when it faces discretionary actions such as this, I believe, Mr. Reyes, to make determinations of compatibility and consistency. And I think we can find that in this case, we don't have facts that give rise to compatibility or consistency. So what my recommendation is going to be is to deny the appeal. My office and I are going to review whatever steps we can take in the future to try to solve this situation as best we can going forward. But I do want to say that I have a lot of respect for the position that the applicants took, precisely because, and I hope people in the community understand that this was not a stretch in terms of their legal argument. It's my job, the job of my office and the planning department, to look at this situation and try to see what we can do in the future. With respect to this particular application, I do think that compatibility and consistency are the problem, and that's why my recommendation is we deny the appeal. Perhaps you want to see a show of hands of who's here.
Yeah, we do have about 18 different cards. And perhaps you waited this long, you made the trip down to downtown, and I respect that a lot. We have one more item that we still have to go through. It's past 4 o'clock. By a standing up or show of hands, can you tell us if you support the council member's position, or do you feel compelled to speak? Would you like to rise, please?
Maybe one speaker.
Okay, can we have one speaker for 2 minutes? Would that be okay? Or is Lynn Ranker here? Yes, come on up.
Thank you so much. 17 people are really happy they don't have to come up and speak.
Okay, that's a good point. All right.
My name is Lynn Ranker, and I live at 17600 Weddington Street on the block where the project is. Could you bring my package up, please, with the photos? My photos. I oppose this development and support the planning staff and the planning commission's recommendation to deny this for the rezoning. However, even if the city were to consider granting this appeal, the city has not addressed the impact of this completely out-of-scale building in a very low density, an RA, not even an R1, but an RA neighborhood. And has also not addressed the traffic impact that this project would have on the neighborhood. I have here a packet which I'll pass forward, which has photographs of the existing homes and shows the setbacks of the existing properties, if I may. Thank you very much. We currently have enough of a problem with drivers who are coming through the neighborhood to avoid the congestion on Ventura Boulevard, on Ventura Freeway, on the other major streets. So we get a heavy, heavy impact already. Putting an apartment building on this block, which is a neighborhood collector road, would, with the overscale building, would create irreparable damage to the neighborhood and create impacts that I believe could not possibly be mitigated. And I appreciate your denial. I hope for your denial of this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rinker. So, I want to thank you for your patience and cooperation. The 17 cars will go in the stack where they are not supporting the appeal, and the action of this committee will be to essentially support the staff report and move forward with that recommendation to the full council.
You're denying the appeal.
Denying the appeal. That'll be the action of this committee. Thank you very much. One more item?
One more item, Councilman. Item 22 is an appeal by Ivan Levy, the Levy Family Trust. They're appealing the decision of the South Valley APC as it relates to recommendations imposed by the zoning administrator for a preschool in CD12, and there's also a 245 motion associated with this action, and the zoning administrator is present.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Pat Brown with the Office of Zoning Administration. At their March 27th meeting, the South Valley Area Planning Commission...
Can you move this closer to you so we can hear you better?
At the March 27th meeting of South Valley Area Planning Commission, they considered the appeal and they modified two conditions. Condition number 7 and 19. Condition number 7 permitted early drop-offs of up to 7 children, and condition 19 allowed signage of the name of the school and phone number on the building. The applicant at that meeting withdrew their opposition to condition number 21 requiring a plan approval. At my hearing and through written correspondence, there were a number of issues that were raised, but the neighbors were expressed concern about the adjacent property to the north, which is also a child care facility and owned by the applicant. And they were concerned that an existing gate was allowing the two properties to intermingle. The north property was not subject to the conditional use procedure. It's just the south property. So I impose conditions number 9 and 14. 9 dealt with the connecting gate, and number 14 reemphasized the fact that this grant only related to the property on the south, the 6100 property. The applicant also requested a reduction in the parking from the previous grant based on the fact that there were only 5 classrooms and 5 teachers at this site. At the APC meeting, and I granted that request. At the APC meeting, the applicant stated that they used this site to also provide parking, not only for this site, but for the site next door to it. This really intensifies the use of the property far more beyond what was addressed at the hearing or in the hearing notice.
Thank you. The appellants like to come forward, please.
Good afternoon, Council Member.
Good afternoon.
My name is Amy Sai Shen. I'm an associate at Jeffrey Mangels Butler Marlborough. Our office is located at 1900 Avenue of the Stars. And our client is the Levy Family Partnership. Council members, we are here today for one reason and one reason only, and that is for the safety of our children and toddlers. I think the best way to demonstrate this issue is if I can direct your attention to an aerial and other photographs which we have submitted with our letter. If you'll turn to attachment A, this is an aerial photograph of the school. Right here on the northeast corner is the Child's World School. Lindley Avenue is a major secondary highway and Topham Street. So currently, parents are driving up Lindley Avenue, turning onto Topham Street and turning into the parking lot right here. And after they park, they walk their children and their toddlers through the school. And I must emphasize the fact that out of the 14 infants and toddlers at the center, 11 of them have siblings at the Child's World School. So after they park, parents will walk through an internal gate and take their infants and toddlers into this facility. Also attached to our letter brief is our letters of support. There's a letter of support from the immediate neighbor who lives right here, and also another letter of support from a daycare which operates right up in this photo right here. This next photo that I'd like to direct your attention to is photo number 5 on your attachment. This shows a very busy secondary major highway. Right here is Lindley Avenue, Topham Street, as I described.
Please continue.
And if you'll notice here, this is the school right here. There's a short sidewalk, but immediately adjacent to the site, which is the Infant and Toddler Center, there is no sidewalk. And in fact, that's even highlighted by the caution arrow right here, right next to Lindley Avenue. This picture was taken at 8:30 in the morning, and it just shows the traffic that's on Lindley Avenue every day. Finally, I'd like to direct your attention to the last photo I have, which is photo number 1 in attachment A. This here is looking at this right here, the brick wall is the Infant and Toddler Center. If you'll notice, there is no sidewalk here. Look how close the cars are driving up right next to the center. So this condition that's imposed currently requires parents to walk along the short sidewalk, which I showed to you earlier, and along here and into the driveway to drop off their infants and toddlers. That creates a very, very dangerous situation. I hope that we have demonstrated the impacts that this condition could impose. And we respectfully request that you allow the interior gate to continue to be used as it historically has been. I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Shin. Mayor Levy? typically we want to hear from the appellants first, then we hear from the council or the public.
I would prefer to go at the end if that is acceptable to the committee, but it's, if you prefer that I go now, I'll be happy to.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Whatever your pleasure. I had preferred to go at the end, but I'll...
That's fine. We'll go in the end. That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
I can go at the end if that's okay.
No, actually, we'll ask you to go next. We'll have the council go last.
My name is Mia Levy, and I'm one of the owners of Child's World School. Actually, what I'd really like to do is just reiterate what Amy has said. I cannot emphasize enough what a safety hazard this condition will impose upon us. What you have to realize is that parents with babies come with not only their babies to school, but with all sorts of baby paraphernalia, I'm sure you know, diaper bags, blankets, strollers, car seats. It will be impossible for these parents to monitor their children where there are cars right next to them and hold all of the things that they need to hold and keep their children safe at the same time. It's an accident waiting to happen. It makes absolutely no sense. Currently, our parents of infants, 11 of them have older siblings, as was said in the other on the other preschool campus. It is so much more convenient for them to be able to come, park, drop children off at one location and go right through the campus gate to the other location. Furthermore, our director, Edie McAllister, needs to supervise both buildings, and it would be putting her in danger also if every single time she wants to go to the building that's just next door, now she uses a gate, it'll be putting her in danger if she has to walk around the corner and walk where the cars are, right next to her. So I respectfully ask you to accept our appeal. Thank you.
Next, Kathleen Daldon. Name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Deladani, and I'm representing the Tarzana Neighborhood Council. And we're also working very closely with the Encino Neighborhood Council, and they're fully supported. The reason why we're involved in it is because the impact is greater to the Tarzana residents because these facilities are directly across the street. Now, we feel that the zoning administrator and the APC made a well-considered decision in this matter before you. The applicant owns these two properties. One property is the daycare center. The other property, as you can see from the photos, is an infant care center, which does not have a conditional use permit. The gate. They removed the gate some time ago, I guess after they purchased the property, and they used both properties basically as one. The applicant states, in addition, I just want to point out from the photos, the 6112 property has a large circular driveway that can be easily accommodating, a safe accommodation to the drop-off and pickup of the infants. But these two properties, the applicant in his appeal said that they have been using both properties, the amenities of both properties, because the 6112 Lindley property has a tennis court and a pool, and they use the 6112 property for some of the activities for the children that attend the 6100. So it's a combination. The main thing was to separate. One of the things that the Area Planning Commission was concerned is that the conducting two different businesses as one, and especially with the second business not having a conditional use permit. And they suggested, well, why don't you come back and get a conditional use permit for the second property, and you can operate both equally as well. And this way the neighbors would have an opportunity to weigh in and put any conditions on it that they deemed for the second property. So therefore, what we're asking is that they continue to keep the businesses separate from the two properties. There is a safe way for those children to get on the 6112 property. It doesn't inhibit them at all. They can get to that property, but the gate was there to be removed so that there would be no the use condoning, that you would not really condone the use of the other property. Thank you, and we hope you will uphold the APC decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Winger. Hopefully you can shed some light here and give us some clarity.
I'll try, thank you.
And guidance.
Once again, Phyllis Winger representing Council Member Greg Smith. This is actually a 245 because the action of the South Valley APC is final, barring the 245. And the only portion that is being challenged is that one condition, 9, that prohibited the use of the gate. You've heard time and time again that it creates a dangerous situation where that ability taken away, and it does. The two properties are owned by one, and they do function. The northern property, 6112, has a state license, which gives them the ability to take care of the babies, the infants. It is my understanding that they do plan to come back and apply for a blanket conditional use, but that's not why we're here today. Right. It is because of Condition 9. To force whoever brings the children to have to either re-enter their cars and go around, and I'm also told the driveway can only accommodate 3 cars, to then drop off their infants, or worse yet, to try to navigate the babies and whatever else and leave the safety of the property and access to public streets is just unconscionable. And it was strictly on that ground that the councilman thought it was appropriate to bring the matter to council to change just that one portion and allow internal access to the property to the north without adding this onerous situation on the people coming. And we would ask that you support that and send it back to council.
Okay. I'm tired, Madam Attorney. This is a 245, right? So our action would be, and help me here, so I want to follow the guidance of the council, knowing that they've allowing for...
For the record, Sharon Cedar of Cardenas. This is a 245, which means that the appeal that was originally before the Area Planning Commission is now before you. So that what you could do is you could adopt the action of the Area Planning Commission, and then if you were going to change that condition with the modification to condition number 9, as suggested by the council office.
That's what I like to do. You okay with that? Right. Okay, so that'll be the action of this committee. Okay. Thank you very much. All right, folks. Public comment here. We have one card. Mrs. Sage?
She's not here.
Public comment?
There she is. Hi.
Good afternoon.
I guess your name and address, please.
Oh, yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Isis Sage. I'm representing Justice League for Benevolence. I'm the founder, and I represent myself at Alexandria Apartments. That's 501 South Spring Street, Los Angeles, and that's District 14 for... Why I'm here is actually for Mr. Huizar. He's been quite elusive today. We've missed each other. However, I'll be brief. I thank you for your time. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you to those council members who this morning so generously voted in favor of the affordable housing, item 13. I'm backtracking, but at the same time, I can't let you go without saying thank you.
Okay.
And to pass it along, please. However, it's crucial that I just make my point, even though Huizar is not here. I will catch him hopefully, then tomorrow I will return. First, my main concern here is to speak in favor of the residents of Alexandria Apartments, and also because I have, as a holistic mentor and quality life motivator and slash freelance artist, I understand that Los Angeles is doing a great deal to bring in artists and productive citizens and, give this city a feel of a holistic environment. With the green ordinance that passed, I'm grateful to that. However, we have a criminal amongst us that is a land developer by the name of Amerland, specifically Logan Properties, the Alexandria Management, who is being sued. He is a slumlord. He is advocating, I could say wholeheartedly, that firsthand knowledge. He has evicted many people illegally in our building, and therefore I qualify as a slumlord promoting homelessness. My main issue here is to promote, or rather propose, a grading system like the way they have in the restaurants from A through F. Because frankly, in my opinion, he gets a big fat F. And again, I will continue this for tomorrow. Thank you for your time, and please support Demille's Law, which Dennis Zine is promoting.
Thank you,
for
Ms.
your time.
Sage. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, folks, seeing no one else for public comment, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.